insecurity in Nigeria has risen sharply in the last few years. In every region of the country, there are at least two major security crises, and we've reached a point where the Nigerian military was, as of December 29, deployed on policing. SBM Intelligence analyzed data covering the period from June 2011 to the end of March 2020 using a collection of public sources, police and media reports, as well as SBM's extensive research network spread across the country. What they found shows that between June 2011 and the end of March 2020, at least $18.3 million has been paid to kidnappers as a ransom. We're joined now by the head of research at SBM Intelligence, Ikemesit Effiong. Ikemesit, good afternoon to you. So what was the motivation behind putting this, this report together, at least from the economic angle?
Okay, so we have been monitoring a lot of economic data that has been passing through over the course of the pandemic, and one of the things that really jumped out to us was the fact that insecurity as a barometer of overall social health and development tanked. So we decided to look at the numbers. Now, we reported extensively on security. We were the ones that found out the figures that I just quoted, that the military was deployed in 34 of Nigeria's 36 states. That has now risen to 35 states. We don't have any active operations right now in the Federal Capital Territory, which is the only exception. And what was interesting to us was that kidnapping in certain parts of the country have risen to an industrial level. It's why we titled the report "The Economics of the Kidnapping Industry." Now, there is a very strong correlation between the economic well-being of Nigeria and the rise or ebb of security, of insecurity. So it was interesting to us, and we just wanted to create a sort of screen map of where these incidents are happening, to what extent they're happening, if they're improving or deteriorating, and what the money was, right? And so we tracked the money, and for all of the sources where we could find a Naira figure, a Naira value to, we converted those into US dollars at the prevailing conventional rates. And then that's how we came up with the $18.1 million figure.
Thank you for that. And I converted at 390, although there's a range of FX exchange rates. I think I got about 7 billion naira, which is a huge amount of money. Well, what else can we glean from those numbers?
So just a quick walk on the methodology. So we converted, we calculated those numbers based on the prevailing rate at the time, right? So we didn't use one straight exchange rate. What the numbers do tell us, right, is that there are certain industries that aren't matching up to the scale and the sophistication of kidnapping right here in the country. They also tell us that when you look at the numbers, we are increasingly paying more in ransoms, right? Year on year than in 2001, which was the beginning point of these reports. So there are so many problematic things that we have observed. Kidnapping is increasing in various parts of the country. There are various places in various states that are very, very unsafe to go to, and it behoves of businesses and investors to at least have a baseline understanding, right, of how kidnapping is increasingly becoming a form of social control and social interaction here in Nigeria.
All right, we're looking at now, I think we had a figure there, a table showing the fatalities during kidnap attempts, which Borno leads at about 489. But I wanted you to, in fact, thank you. Actually, it's also got the table up there, also has number of incidents. And I think when you account, can you take us through the distinction, what your numbers found between looking at the top states with kidnapping incidents and then top states when you account for fatalities?
Okay, so what we're trying to measure was, we're trying to measure two things. One, we're trying to measure spread, so the number of incidents, right? And two, we're trying to measure intensity. So how many of those kidnapping interactions end up in an adverse, in an adverse result? And what you find is that even though, according to our findings, Rivers was home to the most kidnapping incidents over the 10 years, which was the breadth of our study, right? you were more likely to end up dead if you were kidnapped in Borno or Kaduna or Katsina. And that says a lot, again, not only about the appetite of kidnappers and people who kidnap people for ransom, but it also states, it also gives us a barometer into the overall security health of the various states. So if you look at the top 3 states, for example, that had the most fatalities during kidnapping incidents, so you're thinking Borno, Kaduna, and Katsina, those are states that are also dealing with other security incidents. Borno is in a state of insurgency. Kaduna and Katsina are dealing with sectarian violence. And so you have a situation where in this state, it appears as if kidnappers have an increased appetite to actually take things through to the end, right? If you'd remember during the Yar'Adua and also during the Goodluck Jonathan administration, when kidnapping was in its heyday in the South, it was clear that there was a very clear economic imperative in the minds of various ransom takers. And so fight amongst militants was more to get the money than to end up killing or causing grievous bodily harm to the victims. That's not the case in the latest iteration of kidnapping, which we're finding in the Northeast and in the North Central and in the Northwest. And again, just passing through the difference between the intensity of the incidents and also the number of the incidents should also give anyone who's reading this report and anyone who's looking at Nigeria from any intelligence standpoint serious cause for pause.
Okay, and speaking of that serious cause for pause, with regards to what we can attribute to all this, it's economic or is it social or is it a mix?
It's a mixture of both, but we think it's primarily economic. So there's a very huge correlation between how well the Nigerian economy does and a rise in the amount of kidnappings. So that's saying something, and it's going to be very difficult, right, to strip out the economic imperative out of the things which are fueling this rise in kidnapping. But the social is also very important. And so again, to go back to the point that I earlier made, when you look at the social fabric of the various states where the fatalities during kidnapping incidents are really, really high, the social fabric of those states are fraying, to say the least. And so when you are in a situation where you are in a part of Kaduna or Katsina that has been dealing with decades of sectarian violence, you're more likely to have an increased appetite for actually causing grievous bodily harm to your victim than necessarily taking the money. But the money is really important in this case. And that's what we sought to capture in the report, to enlighten, our viewers and our readers on the actual economic cost of continuing to remain a very high-risk country from a security perspective.
Okay, so with that in mind, with a recession already being projected for the country for 2020, how much worse can these numbers get?
I think we should prepare for a lot worse. It's very unclear right now to indicate how bad that would be. I think one of the things that a lot of us economic watchers fall into the habit of is considering the Nigerian economic picture as a whole. Nigeria is a very multifaceted, very diverse, very multifarious country, and the things which are driving the economic dynamics in the Southeast or the South is very different from what from what the economic drivers are in the West or in the Northwest or in the North Central. So you would have a situation where when the recession hits, and it will hit, it will be felt differently in various parts of the country. So you think, places which rely a lot on extractive industries, primarily mining, they will be hit really hard because global commodities prices are shrinking. And that is also happening at the same time when there's a glut in the market for any number of commodities. Oil particularly comes to mind. And so the economic impact will be felt in those communities and in those parts of the country that are disproportionately exposed to the commodities or to the economic imperatives which will suffer as a result of this recession. In addition to that, places which are already suffering from a significant security breakdown will also feel the pinch a lot more. So if you're in the Northwest or you're in the North Central or you're even in parts of the South, things might get worse before they get better. right? You have a situation where over the past 10 years that we measured, and even 20 years, if you stretch the numbers far back, there are whole swathes of this country in which the primary economic activity is kidnapping, right? So there are people who have grown up and have spent almost all of their adult lives practicing, engaging in this practice, and that's not going to change. And the economic dynamics of a recession.
I appreciate the time. We've got to have you back to delve more into this. The head of research at SBM Intelligence, Ikemesit Effiong, thank you for taking us through the economics of kidnapping in Nigeria.